For Module 3, Discussion 1, I use Trenholm's social constructionist perspective and the connection to Instagram. In the discussion, social constructionist perspective views communication as not something that goes on between individuals. Instead, communication is something that surrounds people and holds their world together. Quoted by Trenholm 2020, page 31. Based on this statement, I chose Instagram as a digital platform to explain how Instagram uses communication in the social constructionist perspective. Instagram is used as ways to stay in contact with family, friends, new friendships made, and as social influence. Any social media platform that can allow you to post videos, pictures, and your own thoughts is a way for individuals to feel they're part of their followers' lives, and the influencers to feel they're helping other individuals in their lives. In the generation we are living in, the digital world is how we get by every day, professionally and personally, for communication. In digital communication, there are spoken and nonverbal communication strategies. Language is the forming of words and conveying them by speaking, written, or by action/signals. Daily, we use language as communication with family, co-workers, friends, cashier at the supermarket, etc. All over the world, there are different languages and dialects and different cultural meanings. Language is mental rather than physical, quoted by Trenholm 2020, page 80. Between the words sentences form, the sounds in our voice, the emotions emphasized, and context is all mentally formed and spoken for the sender/receiver to understand the intentions of ourselves and others during our communication. Nonverbal communication is done without using words. Just as language being the spoken communication, nonverbal communication is done by our gestures, posture, body movement, mannerism, facial expressions, eye behavior, and tone of voice. These nonverbal communicators come naturally and less objective than verbal communication. Trenholm 2020, page 113. Nonverbal codes are universal, such as certain gestures, meaning the same no matter the culture. Nonverbal codes let us know how the conversation is playing out, as in the liking, status, and responsiveness. Verbal and nonverbal codes work hand in hand. Nonverbal elaborate more with the verbal part of the communication. Sometimes those nonverbal cues tell us what they won't verbally say. Trenholm explains 4 perspectives of communication. There is the psychological, social constructionist, the pragmatic perspective, and the critical/cultural studies perspective. These perspectives help us understand communication depending on an individual's psychological thinking, cultural constructs, patterns or behavior, and social and political structures. Trenholm 2020, page 27. I can take a personal episode in my life to explain. This happened many years ago between my sister and me. We are both opposites. Let's start there. I am more about helping others. She is more about herself. No offense to her. My sister was going through something in her life, and I was there whenever she needed me. She got past it and was doing fine. I then needed her, and she was not there for me the way I needed my sister to be. So I sent her a text message to voice to her how I was feeling about her not being there for me when I have always been there for her. In my digital communication, I was not trying to start an argument or offend her in any way, but I should have known how she would interpret it and react to it. She responded with a not-so-nice message, which in turn became a back-and-forth argument. Messages being sent in caps or exclamation points, quick not-so-nice emojis exchanged. My sister then decided to call instead of text back, which this then allowed us both to hear the strength and forcefulness in our words until we both ended the conversation. In this episode, the psychological perspective can be explained in this situation. Psychological perspective focuses more on how the sender encodes their message to the receiver for them to decode the message correctly. As we are encoding and decoding the message, it is based on our mental beliefs, values, attitudes, feelings, and everyone's own experience. The message will have its own unique meaning. Trenholm 2020, page 29. Based on the information I gave on this episode, knowing that we are both opposites, I could have delivered the message differently. I was in a mental state where I was upset with her and dealing with my own personal matters, that the message was not delivered in a way that I assumed was explaining myself and how I am feeling in the moment without thinking about how she would decode it. Sending her this message when I was not in this upset mental state, it could have helped for her in decoding it better and not causing this mess of a conversation. When looking back at this episode my sister and I had, I see the role of how the psychological perspective and verbal/nonverbal communication impacted my personal episode. When the conversation went from nonverbal to verbal communication, the forcefulness in our voice, the words being formed, and the emotions given to the receiver was encoded/decoded by one another. This helped to get the conversation to diffuse better than it would have if it stayed nonverbal. Our nonverbal communications used were caps, exclamation points, emojis, but with her being my sister, I was able to imagine her nonverbal cues, how her facial expressions were, or how her stance would be, whether it was during our spoken or nonverbal communication. I have learned over the years to think before you speak, especially with someone you know how they will react in certain situations. My references are by Trenholm, S. 2020, Thinking Through Communication, the 9th edition, by Taylor and Francis.